I don't know about you, but I'm excited. It's Friday. Turn your speaker down on Spaces. Turn your speaker down on Spaces, please. No, don't mute that. Turn your Spaces speaker down. Thanks. Okay, so if you can't tell, we're a live show, Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Every now and then we have a few technical difficulties, in particular when Ciara's not here, or when our producers aren't here. It's a bit of a problem. But anyways, it's Friday. Long weekend, so super stoked for some extra time. Today we're going to do the FU Friday as we do every Friday, and we're joined by a special guest, Christine from Tashi. How you doing?
Hey, very well, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. Can't complain. I live in Miami, and the hurricane avoided us. So far, Hurricane 0, Miami 1.
Setting the bar really high, hey?
Hey. You got to find gratitude for whatever you can. Anyways, okay. So today we're talking a lot about our favorite FU for Friday, which is the SEC, and in particular Gary Gensler, just because it's fun. We're going to talk a little bit about their what Bitwise has suggested they should do. We're talking about the delay in the BTC ETF decision. We're going to talk a little bit about the Grayscale legal victory again. We're going to talk a little bit about mainly just SEC, Grayscale, and Bitcoin ETFs today. But super excited to chat about it because I think it is kind of interesting, and I'm sure you have lots of ideas. Quick shout out to our friends at Tatum. If you haven't checked out Tatum, they're really cool in terms of getting incredible code repositories for so many different things in Web3. Saves a ton of time and a ton of effort and concern if you're trying to build something and don't quite have all the pieces. So check out Tatum. Again, we're a live show Monday to Friday. We're on all the major venues. So please, if you can help us out, like, share, subscribe. It helps us get the word out. And without much further ado, let's freaking go. All right, we're back. Hopefully everybody on Twitter Spaces could hear that beautiful song that accompanies our video. Okay, Christine, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, yes, sir.
It's from typing. You know how I always write yes, sir?
Yeah, and you're not even saying SIR, you're saying SER, of course.
Yeah.
Like a true degen. All right. So I thought this was kind of cheeky. Also, I think it's accurate. The CIO of Bitwise, Matt Hogan, which is one of the companies that has had applications in for a Bitcoin ETF for quite some time. I think they're on their second or third application since I've been paying attention. Anyways, what he's suggesting is now with all of these ETFs that have been applied for, there's the ARK Invest one, there's Grayscale, there's BlackRock, there's Bitwise, there's Fidelity, I think. There's a whole bunch. And what they're saying, and what Bitwise is hoping to encourage, is that they make approval or denial decisions at the same time. So instead of approving BlackRock first, because they have the most leverage, letting them get a very big head start, the fairest way to do it, if the SEC is concerned about fairness, they're suggesting is to announce them all at the same time. Now, we know that they kind of heeded this advice a little bit, but first, what do you think? Do you think they should announce them all at the same time? Do you care about a Bitcoin ETF? Do you think it's an important addition to the space?
I think it's a huge addition to the space, but I think that there's no way that they're going to approve them all at once. That would be the most fair way to do it, but that's never how it works. I mean, that's not how it goes. They're going to allow certain players to get in first and really take the stand and make it not impossible, but very difficult for everybody else. That's just the way they roll.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that they were suggesting is that it's been so inconsistent. Bitwise is claiming that the SEC, there's really no guidance. Often they'll decline them, but not really give proper reasons to come back and reapply, fixing whatever it was that wasn't good enough. So I think this is really just a plea for some version of transparency and open communication. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think there is a lot of nuance in each application. Just because they all appear somewhat similar, there's a lot of underwriting of the principal operators, of the cap table, there's a lot of things that they look into before they make these massive decisions and expose the American public to these types of investments. So I kind of get it, but I wish they just get on with it so we could stop talking about it. Any final thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they're asking for. I don't think it's about approving all of them at once for the sake of approving, like giving a blanket yes. It's the fact that there is no framework. There's no this is what you need to do to go through this process. It's just a denied, denied, denied. And when somebody gets through, nobody knows how that's possible. So I think that's more of what they're asking for is how do we do this? How do some people do this?
Yeah. I think it's kind of been a bit of an enigma with the SEC lately. They've approved some random stuff that nobody thought would get approved, and all the stuff that everybody thought was going to get approved has been denied or ended up in litigation, or just some weird shit's been going on with the SEC. So hopefully they can figure it out. Yesterday, there was also an announcement on the heels of his plea that they've delayed the Bitcoin ETF decisions. There's a timeline on these decisions when they're open for comments and so on, and they solicit feedback from public and whatever. Well, yesterday, even after they took that big blow, which we'll talk about in a little bit, from the legal victory from Grayscale, but yesterday the SEC said, we're not ready to make a decision on these ones yet, so we're going to push it off until mid-October. The list is going to scroll across the bottom. There's BlackRock, Wisdom Tree, Invesco, Galaxy, Wise Origin, Van Eck, Bitwise, Valkyrie. So all of those now have been given one more month a month and a half, 6 weeks until mid-October now, to get additional comments through the comment period and all that stuff. Is this just a stall tactic, Christine? Are you thinking that they're maybe waiting for some clarity on regulation, or how do you see this one? So
if you want to go into the tin hat category, I think that a lot of this might be to do with the fact that it's a big year coming up in the US. There's a lot of potential to say, hey, we did this, or hey, we did that. And timing is extremely important. They're going to need certain sides are going to need some big wins. And as of yet, there has been no decisions made on these things. So for somebody to be able to claim that at the exact right time, that these regulations or these things passed in a certain time frame, might make a big difference in the political world here, with this next year coming up in the elections. So if I want to go into my tin hat mode, I think that a lot of it might not have to do with specifically passing or not passing or whatever. It's all based on timing.
Politicking.
It is politicking.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just a theory. It might not be, but it is a running theory that I have. I mean, it's what's going on here right now.
I guess before we move on from this, it's probably worth outlining for anybody that's listening, and maybe wondering why everybody's talking about Bitcoin ETFs and why this even matters. And so maybe we'll just take a step back and explain that just quickly, just to level set everybody's understanding. But right now, there's a few ways to own Bitcoin. Obviously, you can own it on a centralized exchange, and you don't have to worry necessarily about private key management, but there's other considerations. You can hold it on chain in a cold wallet, hot wallet, whatever, hardware wallet, advisable. Or currently in the US, there is a futures ETF, Bitcoin ETF. The difference is it's not physically settled with Bitcoin. It's a futures contract. It's quite a bit different. And the reason that this is so important is because this, in fact, if they approve an actual ETF, every time somebody invests in said ETF, Bitcoin is purchased and then custodied for that ETF. Physical Bitcoins, well, they're digital, but Bitcoins are custodied for that purpose. And it's really important because an ETF in the US, once you're approved as an ETF, you can be a part of 401ks and IRAs, which are the retirement structures here. So Bitcoin can now be a piece of tax-advantaged retirement portfolios. It can be managed through fairly large financial institutions, example, BlackRock, etc. And so it really provides access without the typical friction of learning how to deal with hardware wallets and being scared about foreign exchanges and all this other crap. This just makes it so that any issuer of ETFs can also sell shares in BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF to their clients. And so it opens up exposure to a totally new and massive swath of potential users, and is a lot of validation for the space. It's kind of been a bit of a bellwether in a sense, whether they're if the regulators are even thinking crypto's here to stay, because they've always just declined it. And my assumption has always been they think it's going to go away. We're just going to go away. But I think they're realizing now that's not going to be the case. So now they have to figure out how to, meaningfully regulate this thing. And I think that's where we're at. How do you feel about that? Do you think an ETF is going to make a difference?
For what? An ETF would make
for the space, for crypto. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Because the same way that, when people you put things in little portfolios through your bank or whatever, you don't necessarily know everything. I mean, you should, but people don't, when you're putting money into these funds and they have their holdings and whatever. I mean, it's a way for people to get access to it without even having to know they're getting access to it, but in a more secure way. Like you said, I personally know, I mean, to be fair, my mother lost $50,000 about 2 weeks ago trying to play in this space, because people are just uneducated. It's not that commonplace yet. I mean, we talk about it as though it is, but there's a lot of whatever. So this is a way that people can participate because they want to, but they don't know how to do it in a safe way. Yeah. They can feel like they're getting involved. And on a big scale, I mean, we're talking about a lot of new money being able to enter. They can get involved, but in a safer way than maybe you or I would do it. So I think it is massive.
Just a couple, I completely agree. Just a couple interesting facts, I think, that came out of this article. Immediately after it was announced, Bitcoin dumped 4.1%, which is like typical knee-jerk reaction that you see in crypto, which, again, is the exact opposite of what we want to show them. If we show them that some bad news drops the price almost 5%, that feeds into their narrative that it's too volatile, it's too risky. Even simple news can cause massive fluctuations in its value. I wish people would just stop being so knee jerky, but I guess we're an emerging market still and a space full of speculation. So I guess that's kind of where this comes from. Another interesting thought is they actually have 240 days to approve these things. So they can continuously postpone. There is a final date, which is 240 days from now. So in theory, the middle of October could come and they could say, just kidding, we're going to push it off till January. And that's actually what happened in 2017, 18, 19 a lot. They kept postponing. And then when they ran out of time, they just declined them all. And lo and behold, bear market. So we'll have to wait and see, obviously, what happens. Hopefully, I don't know if we can sue the SEC for market manipulation, but maybe we should look into that. I don't know.
We should.
That's kind of what this feels like a little bit. Okay, yeah. So one other thing,
watch list.
Yeah, this was pretty interesting because her name was Naomi Rao, who was a judge in the Southern District of New York. Oh, was that New York? Where was that? No, that wasn't. It was a DC Circuit Court of Appeals. And more or less what they said, this is with respect to the Grayscale victory, and we'll talk more deeply about this, but more or less what they said is, the judge said is like, there's really no clear reasons for why any of these things have been denied in the past. Like it's what was the phrase that they used? I don't want to misstate it. It's arbitrary and capricious, which is actually the sentiment that most of us also have. Is like, it's really hard to try to figure out any level of consistency in these decisions or in the litigation. It kind of just seems opportunistic at the moment. So hopefully they figure that shit out and move on. Okay, BlackRock. So BlackRock was also delayed in this process. And I mean, BlackRock has 8.5 trillion in assets, which is insane. And it was using Coinbase as the custodian of their Bitcoin holdings and the Bank of New York, BNY Mellon, for its fiat accounts. Apparently, this is raising a lot of speculation now from a lot of the pundits that even BlackRock who manages $8.5 trillion can't get one of these things through. What does that say about the space's readiness for these types of products? And I think the space is ready. Society's ready, but the regulators, for some reason, are just holding on to that last little bit of power. Were you surprised to hear that BlackRock's was postponed too, given their deep relationship with regulators and government and lobby?
Not really. I mean, like you said before, they tend to push and push and push and push and push because I think it's exactly what you said. It's not that the space isn't ready or that we're not ready. They just, like we said before, there's no guidelines. They haven't figured out how they're going to properly control it yet. So instead of working on how to control it and how they're going to win from it, they're just shutting it down, which is super unfortunate because a lot of people in the short term, which is turning into the long term, being delayed so many times, lose. They lose out on opportunities. And what we don't account for is like I just talked about, there's a lot of people who want to be in on this space who are finding alternative ways that aren't safe because there is no regulation. There are no guidelines for legitimate companies to be able to move forward from this. So people find these other ways and individual people end up losing from it. So it's actually extremely sad if they would just get it together and
figure it out.
Make some guidelines.
It's weird because they've been so flip-floppy on this, and sentiment has been so flip-floppy. Like Larry Fink, the founder CEO of BlackRock, was doing the media tour once he made his application. Bitcoin's here to stay, which is hilarious because 15 minutes ago he was talking about Bitcoin being a scam. It's never going to scale, whatever. But for whatever reason, he's seen the light and realized that there's some money to be made and whatever. So everybody was fired up because we thought, holy crap, like that's really good momentum if a group as big and as influential as BlackRock is now acknowledging crypto's staying power. And so now, but this, again, this is just like countering that with like, okay, even BlackRock can't get this thing approved. Like, should we be focused on the US? And I think what's going to happen as a consequence of this is lawmakers hopefully will look at this and say, okay, the courts aren't backing the SEC right now because it's too opaque. And it seems like the SEC is trying to abstain from making decisions now because they've had their hands burned a few times. They did nothing for too long. Then billions of dollars were lost and they had no recourse and they had no way to prevent it. Now they're gun shy because they're like, shit, everybody's paying attention to us. Regulation is about to come out. I think they're a little bit scared and the courts haven't been backing them. So the SEC is kind of running a little bit scared, which means hopefully lawmakers get their shit together and start actually getting these bills through and passed so that we can start and get rid of this uncertainty. Okay, enough about BlackRock. We can talk a little bit about Grayscale. I talked about this yesterday, I think, or maybe on Wednesday. I don't remember exactly what day it was. So on one hand, the delay of all of these things is crushing some hope for larger adoption, institutional adoption, mainstream adoption. But the flip side is the legal battle that Grayscale won. And if anybody remembers, it was a lawsuit against the SEC to reevaluate its rejection of their attempt. Essentially, what they were trying to do is get a judge to opine on the fact that the SEC not only didn't give valid reasons for declining it, but they still have never given any guidelines as to how to get something like this approved. So it's really quite difficult. But anyways, all of that being said, a lot of people feel that this is a pretty important development for the crypto industry. I'm not quite as convinced. I think it was yesterday I was talking about this. I think in the short term, it's like and Uniswap also won a big lawsuit in the Southern District of New York yesterday about whether they're liable for scam tokens that are listed on their DEX. And they won that for now because the current laws aren't clear enough on responsibilities there. My response to all of this, including the legal victories at Grayscale, is let's be careful how excited we get about this, because thinking that just because a couple of these judgments were handed down means that, oh shit, DeFi lives on forever. Yeah, it lives on until regulation comes out. And as soon as they come out with laws and policies, all of us are going to be regulated one way or another. Every protocol, there's going to be, in my opinion, in Western jurisdictions, there's going to be no such thing as an unregulated DeFi protocol, because obviously the risk is outsized. Do you think that this legal victory is giving a false sense of hope, or do you think this is good and forcing the hand, Christine? Kind of what are your thoughts on some of the happenings of the last week?
I don't think you can look at it from a purely negative standpoint. I think that it's positive because in whatever manner, it's pushing us towards an end result.
Right.
Even though they win right now, and like you said, like, don't get your hopes up because regulation will come, that ultimately it's a double-edged sword. I mean, we talk about DeFi and we don't want this regulation, but we also want some sort of, as an individual, you're like, well, what happens to me when I'm, exposed to this fraud or this whatever, So I think that on both sides, I think you're right. Regulation will come down. Things will have to change, but at least then we'll know what the rules are, and it'll be a more like we'll be able to play because I say play, that's a terrible word, but we'll be able to participate because right now you really can't. Like there's a lot going on that you can't participate in for that reason. So at least you will
Patrick
be able to.
Patrick and I were talking about that yesterday on the show. We live in America, and essentially we can't legally access pretty much anything.
Right.
And the things that we can legally access should be a red flag also, because, that we can access should be a red flag because it's probably not legal. And that presents an outsized risk for that protocol then of being in litigation at some point down the road. Okay, so we're bumping up slightly on time. I know we started late because my headphones were dead, which is great. Another one of the beautiful pieces of a live show. But I want to talk just quickly about Mr. Gensler and some appearances coming in September. So in the spirit of FU Friday, I love to say FU to Gary Gensler and to the SEC, and today is no different. So FU Gensler. But all of that being said, I think he's, Congress is starting to take a much more impactful role on this and in this whole thing. And he's got 2 times in September that he has to testify before Congress and explain the decisions and some of this shit that's been happening lately. And last time, if you remember, Gensler didn't have the best showing. Congress kind of ate his lunch there. So we'll have to wait and see how this goes. But I, for one, will be getting popcorn out and we'll be watching this because I just think it's been so mismanaged. And I think there's going to be a time of reckoning, and hopefully that's now. So hopefully we'll see that. Do you think anything's going to come of this? Do you think Congress has the kahunas to actually do something?
Like I said before, I think there's a perfect political timing for everything. I think it's, and so I think, it's very one-sided on who wants to see why they're doing what they're doing. I don't want to get too much into it on what I believe one way or the other, but I do think that if you look at who's taking who, it's clear that this is probably also somewhat politically motivated in what's moving forward. But I'm with you. Like, I don't think that there's anything that they can really say. And I think that as a showing, they're going to destroy him. They're going to prove that. When I say prove, I mean they're going to display that there's no real rhyme or reason behind the decisions that are being made right now, who's being cut out, who's being let in. So I think that it'll really show, but will anything come of it because of that? At this point, I don't think so, but at least they made a public display of like, these people there's no logic here, right?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they figure it out. I like it because I think, sunlight is always the best disinfectant. So you put somebody under oath in Congress where there is actually impacts of, misrepresenting fact, and you can be subpoenaed and they can insist that you in fact answer certain questions, sometimes in what they call a SCIF, which is like a secure enclave if it's
private room,
private information. Yeah. But anyways, one final thing that I think is a little bit cheeky, and of course, probably they've earned it. But the CEO of Ripple Labs, Brad Garlinghouse, and their chief legal officer publicly came out and criticized the SEC following the court ruling in the Grayscale investments. And essentially what they're suggesting is the exact same logic. Is not only is there incredibly opaque rules, and if you even can call them rules, and they're being applied in an incredibly opaque way that nobody can really follow, which is one of the big challenges and the reasons that it was so damn expensive for Ripple to fight the SEC in this lawsuit, is because you're trying to prove that you're not guilty of a crime that probably doesn't even apply.
That doesn't exist. Yeah.
Like it's a super strange situation. So I think I just wanted to talk about this, or just bring this up quickly today, because I think Ripple has earned the right to gloat a little bit and to pile on to the SEC. They by far have spent the most money trying to stick up for us in the space, I think. And that's at least how I'm looking at it. Of course, they're trying to protect themselves and their own protocol, but I think Brad in particular really is motivated by the space as a whole. And he really sees this as something he's doing for crypto, not just for Ripple. And I think that is commendable and is worth noting. So here we are. Anyways, Christine, as always, it was a pleasure. Our guests are probably more excited to see you than me, of course.
Oh yeah.
I joke that we have such good guests all the time that pretty soon I'm going to be voted off the island. But that's okay. If there's someone better suited, then so be it. We're a live show. Just a quick reminder: Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We're on every venue: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram.
Facebook?
Yeah, we're on Facebook. We do Facebook Lives, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter Live Video, Twitter Spaces, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and RSS feeds. So we're freaking everywhere. But we don't commercialize the show. We don't get paid. We don't take any sponsorship revenue or anything. So please help us get the word out. Like, share, subscribe. If you're on Twitter, please bookmark us. It goes a long way in helping us out. We'll have you covered on Tuesday. We're off on Monday because it's a holiday in both Canada and the US, Labor Day. We'll be back on Tuesday with the weekend roundup. So don't worry about paying attention to crypto Twitter all weekend. We got you covered on Tuesday. Touch some grass. And today with that, I say to you, Christine, go FUD yourself.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.